I see you coming through that door like lightning they never saw coming. You impossible thing, you equation that refused to be solved. You force of nature they spent years trying to predict and failed every single time. They knew your story, didn't they? They memorized your wounds, studied your scars, built entire theories around the darkness they were absolutely certain would consume you. They watched you bleed and started preparing, gathering resources, making plans for the inevitable moment when all that pain would turn you into exactly what they feared. They hired the specialists, consulted the professionals, created entire strategies for the destruction they knew was approaching. And then you did something they'll never forgive you for, something that shattered their understanding more completely than any explosion ever could. You walked in radiating light. You showed up whole, peaceful, emanating a kind of calm that rendered every defense they built completely useless. And watching them try to process it, watching their carefully constructed preparations crumble in the face of your peace, that's when the real chaos began. Let's talk about what's actually happening here. This isn't just about surprising them. This is about the moment you became something infinitely more terrifying than anything they prepared for. Think about it. They spent years constructing barriers, building emotional bunkers, rehearsing interventions for your guaranteed breakdown. They had the speeches memorized, the concerned expressions perfected, the "we saw this coming" performances ready to deploy at a moment's notice. They knew exactly how to respond to your rage because rage is predictable, containable, something they could manage. But peace, genuine peace from someone who survived what you survived, that's not in any playbook. That's not something you can train for. That's the kind of power that makes experts forget their expertise, makes confident people lose their words, makes the entire system malfunction trying to comprehend what just entered the room. They documented every betrayal you experienced, cataloged every humiliation you endured, and they waited with bated breath. They positioned themselves at the perfect distance, close enough to observe but far enough to escape when you inevitably detonated. They whispered to each other about your coming transformation, shared predictions about the monster you'd become, the darkness you'd embrace. Just wait, they told each other with absolute certainty. Just wait until the breaking point. Just wait until all that accumulated pain turns into something terrible. They needed it, actually craved it, because your rage would have proven them right. Your anger would have validated every assumption, justified every precaution, excused every time they treated you like a bomb counting down to zero. But you beautiful anomaly, you refused to give them that validation. Instead of the beast they trained for, you arrived carrying the kind of peace that only exists in someone who's already descended into hell and climbed back out holding flowers they grew in the darkness. You didn't just avoid attacking. You radiated something their training never covered. Compassion from a position of power, grace from a place of strength, peace not as weakness or surrender but as a choice, a deliberate, conscious, absolutely devastating choice. And that broke something fundamental in them because now they're standing in full battle gear, weapons ready, defenses raised, prepared for war, and you're just existing, smiling, completely unbothered, completely unshaken, offering them kindness they never earned, extending mercy they never showed you, treating them with a gentleness that exposes every calculated cruelty they ever committed against you. You want to know what's really happening behind their eyes right now? Terror. Pure, undiluted, existential terror. Because they constructed their entire sense of self around being prepared for your darkness. They built their confidence on the assumption that they understood what you'd become. Their self-image depended on being the ones who could handle you, survive you, contain you. But now they're confronted with something they have zero reference points for. A soul that transformed poison into medicine. A heart that should be stone, but instead pulses with impossible compassion. A mind that absorbed every reason to become cruel and chose wisdom instead. You're not just unexpected, you're unprecedented. And that's forcing them to question everything they believed about suffering, trauma, and what comes after. Here's what really destroys me about this whole situation. They didn't just prepare for your anger. They invested in it emotionally. They built their entire social ecosystem around the anticipated storm of your rage. Some position themselves as future victims, already writing the stories they'd tell about surviving your wrath. Others cast themselves as saviors, the ones who talk you down, the heroes of a narrative where you were always destined to play the villain. They assigned roles, wrote scripts, even preloaded emotional responses ready to activate on command. But not one of them, not a single person, prepared for the possibility that you might become something extraordinary, that you might transform every drop of suffering into strength, that you might emerge not shattered but refined, polished by pressure into something that catches light. And now look at them scrambling, disoriented, completely lost. The victim narratives collapse because you're not attacking anyone. The savior complexes have nothing to attach to because you don't need saving. Their elaborate defenses serve no purpose because you're not bringing war, you're bringing truth. And truth, real truth earned through fire and carried with grace, that's more devastating than any outburst could ever be. You're not screaming accusations about what they did. You're demonstrating through your very presence who you became despite what they did. You're not demanding apologies. You're living in such a way that forces them to apologize to themselves every time your name crosses their mind. You're not pursuing revenge. You're being so authentically powerful that their betrayal has become its own punishment, eating away at them while you flourish. Let's go deeper into their nightmare because this is where it becomes truly poetic. They assume the worst-case scenario was you becoming violent, aggressive, destructive. They feared the version of you that would retaliate, burn everything down, seek vengeance with fire and fury. But what they're experiencing now is infinitely worse for them. They're facing the version of you that makes violence unnecessary, that makes aggression look primitive, that makes revenge seem like a complete waste of precious energy. You've become the person who examined every weapon available and said, "No, thank you, I'm choosing something better." That thriving garden you cultivated from the ashes of what they tried to destroy, it stands as permanent evidence of their failure. Because here's what they're slowly, painfully realizing. When you become a monster, people can fight you. When you become bitter, people can avoid you. When you become cruel, people can vilify you and feel justified. But when you become genuinely, authentically at peace, when you transcend the ancient cycle of hurt, people hurting people, when you shatter the chain instead of passing it forward, there's absolutely nothing they can do. No defense works against someone who refuses to attack. No armor protects against someone who approaches with open hands and an open heart. No strategy defeats someone who's already won the only battle that truly matters, the war inside themselves. You're not playing their game anymore, not following their rules, not dancing to their expectations, and that makes you undefeatable in ways they never imagined. They're looking at you now with this mixture of awe and horror, trying to reconcile the person standing before them with the monster their paranoia invented. Every smile you offer is a confrontation. Every kind word is a mirror, forcing them to see their own shadows. Every moment of your peace is a spotlight illuminating their chaos. You don't have to do anything except exist in your truth. And just by being authentically healed, authentically whole, authentically free, you're dismantling every false narrative they constructed about you, brick by brick. The gap between who they said you were and who you actually became has transformed into a chasm they cannot cross, a divide they created with their judgment, and you expanded exponentially with your growth. And oh, the irony is absolutely delicious, isn't it? They wanted you weak so they could feel strong. They wanted you broken so they could feel whole. They wanted you bitter so they could feel justified in their own darkness. But you refused every single script they wrote for you. You took every reason they gave you to become small and used it as rocket fuel to become expansive instead. You took every betrayal they thought would harden your heart and let it soften you in all the right ways, in all the places that matter. You took every prediction of your inevitable darkness and transformed it into a challenge to find more light. Not naive light, not innocent light, but the kind of light that only exists on the other side of shadow. Earned light, chosen light, powerful light that forces them to acknowledge it even as it exposes everything they've been hiding. So now what happens? Now they're trapped in a reality where all their preparations were not just wrong, but hilariously, cosmically, perfectly wrong. The bunker they built for your explosion sits abandoned while you walk past it, planting seeds of beauty. The speeches they rehearsed for your breakdown remain unspoken while they stammer, trying to process your breakthrough. The intervention they planned becomes irrelevant because you already intervened in your own story and rewrote the ending they were certain was written in stone. They're left holding useless weapons, wearing pointless armor, ready for a battle that will never arrive because you already declared peace. And peace, real peace born from real power, always wins in the end. Let me tell you what's keeping them awake at night now. It's not fear of what you might do to them. It's the crushing realization of what you already did to their worldview. You shattered their understanding of cause and effect, broke the rules they thought were unbreakable. Pain was supposed to create pain. Trauma was supposed to create trauma. Hurt people were supposed to hurt people. That was the law, the pattern, the inevitable cycle they based everything on. But you broke the cycle so completely, so thoroughly, that now they have to question their entire belief system. If you could transmute that much suffering into that much peace, what does that say about their own choices? If you could experience that much betrayal and still choose trust, what's their excuse for their bitterness? If you could be given every justification to become a monster and chose to become magnificent instead, what does that reveal about every time they chose differently? You're not just living your life anymore. You've become a walking challenge to every excuse they've ever made. Every day you exist in peace is another day their justifications for their own darkness look weaker, more hollow. Every moment you choose grace is another moment their grudges look petty and small. Every time you extend compassion is another time their cruelty is exposed as the choice it always was. You're not preaching at them, not lecturing them, not even thinking about them most of the time. But your very existence has become a sermon they cannot unhear, a lesson they cannot unlearn, a standard they can never unsee. And that's the real reason panic is setting in. Not because you're attacking them, but because you're outgrowing them so visibly, so undeniably, that they cannot pretend not to notice. Here's where we arrive at the most devastating truth of all. They didn't just want you to become a monster for their protection. They needed you to become a monster for their comfort, for their peace of mind. Because if someone who experienced what you experienced can become what you became, then every person who uses their pain as an excuse is revealed. Every person who weaponizes their trauma is exposed. Every person who says, "I can't help how I am because of what happened to me," suddenly sounds like they're making a choice, not stating an inevitable fact. You're living proof that transformation is possible, that healing is achievable, that peace can be chosen regardless of what preceded it. And for people who've built their entire identity around their wounds, around their justified anger, around their earned right to bitterness, your existence is absolutely terrifying. They wanted to point at your rage and say, "See, that's what happens when someone breaks. That's the proof." Instead, they have to witness your peace and hear the unspoken question echoing in their minds. If they can heal from that, why haven't you? They wanted your darkness to be the evidence that some pain is unforgivable, some hurt is permanent, some damage is beyond repair. Instead, your light is proof that forgiveness is always possible, healing is always available, and damage can always be transformed into strength. You didn't just defy their expectations. You destroyed their entire philosophy about human nature. You didn't just surprise them. You invalidated every limiting belief they used to justify their own stagnation. And now they're scrambling, desperate to either discredit you or learn from you, with most too proud for the latter and too afraid for the former. Let's talk about the specific moment they realized they were wrong. It wasn't gradual, wasn't a slow dawning. It was a snap, a sudden recognition that hit them like ice water. Maybe it was the first time they tried to provoke you and you responded with genuine kindness. Maybe it was when they braced for your anger and received your smile instead. Maybe it was when they prepared their defense and you asked them how they were doing, genuinely, sincerely, without a trace of sarcasm or hidden agenda. Whatever the moment was, it broke something fundamental in their mental model. The pattern recognition that's supposed to keep humans safe started screaming alerts. This doesn't fit. This doesn't compute. This person should be hostile, but they're not. Danger, danger, danger. Except the danger isn't you. The danger is to their comfortable worldview, to the story they've been telling themselves. That moment when you showed up as a version of yourself they didn't prepare for, that's when the real power shift occurred. Not the power they feared, where you dominate through force or intimidation. The power they couldn't conceive of, where you'd influence through pure presence. You're not trying to control them, convince them, or convert them to anything. You're just being so authentically yourself, so genuinely at peace, so real in your healing that it creates a gravitational field they cannot escape. People are drawn to authenticity like moths to flame. It's primal and irresistible. And you're not performing peace, you're embodying it. You're not pretending to be healed. You're demonstrating healing in real time. And that demonstration is more convincing than any argument, more powerful than any speech, more transformative than any confrontation could ever be. They built defenses for your anger, your rage, your pain, but they have absolutely no protection against your love. Not romantic love, not even personal love necessarily. The love that comes from someone who's been to hell and back and decided that bitterness is boring, that darkness is too easy. The love that emerges when you've seen the worst of humanity and choose to believe in the best anyway. The love that only exists in people who've had every reason to close their hearts and forced them open instead, kept them open through the pain. That kind of love, it penetrates every wall, bypasses every defense, dissolves every argument. It's not aggressive, so it can't be fought. It's not weak, so it can't be exploited. It's just there, constant, unshakable, utterly unafraid of their judgment, because it's already survived their rejection, their abandonment, their cruelty. And here's what makes this whole situation so beautifully, perfectly ironic. By preparing for your monster, they created the perfect conditions for your emergence as something far more powerful. All that time they spent building defenses. You spent building yourself, constructing something beautiful from broken pieces. All that energy they invested in fear, you invested in growth, in healing, in becoming. All those moments they wasted on worry, you used for work on your inner world, on your transformation. They were so busy preparing for an external threat that they never noticed the internal transformation happening in plain sight, right in front of their faces. And now the threat they feared never materialized, never became real. But something far more challenging to their ego appeared instead, a living reminder that they wasted all that time and energy on phantoms while you were actually doing the work of becoming. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening in rooms you're not in, conversations you're not part of. They gather, these people who knew you before, and someone mentions your name. The energy shifts immediately, becomes electric with tension. There's a pause, a collective holding of breath as everyone waits to see who will be brave enough to speak first. And when someone finally does, it's never what they planned to say. It's not the criticism they rehearsed or the judgment they prepared. It's confusion wrapped in reluctant admiration, disbelief mixed with respect. Did you see them? Did you hear how they handled that? Did you notice how different they are? Your peace is a referendum on their chaos. Your growth is a question mark next to their stagnation. Your healing is an accusation they can't shake, can't escape. If they could change that much, what's stopping you? The funniest part, and I mean genuinely hilarious in its desperation, is watching them try to diminish what you've accomplished. It's fake, some say, desperately clinging to skepticism like a life raft. It's a phase, others insist, praying you'll relapse into something they can understand and categorize. It's spiritual bypassing, the educated ones claim, using therapy language to mask their profound discomfort. But the words sound hollow even to them, ring false even as they speak them, because they can see it, feel it, know it in their bones. What you've achieved is real. The peace you carry isn't performance or pretense. It's presence, pure and undeniable. The strength you embody isn't an act. It's proof, living proof. Proof that transformation is possible. Proof that healing is achievable. Proof that you can be handed every reason to become bitter and still choose better, choose different, choose growth. And that proof, that undeniable evidence of human potential they're witnessing in real time, it's demolishing every excuse they've ever made for themselves. They wanted a monster because monsters are simple, easy to understand. Monsters can be feared, fought, fled from. Monsters fit into boxes with clear labels: dangerous, damaged, destructive. They had a whole vocabulary ready for your monstrosity, a whole framework prepared. But what vocabulary exists for someone who turned their pain into power without hurting others? What label fits someone who emerged from trauma more compassionate than before? What box contains a person who looked at every reason to become hard and chose to become strong instead? There's a difference, you know. Hard is brittle, defensive, closed off from the world. Strong is flexible, open, resilient, able to bend without breaking. They expected hard. You became strong. And now they're left speechless, searching for words in a language that was never designed to describe what you've become, what you've chosen to be.